The Billionaire's Promise by Shadonna Richards. Narrated by L.W. Salinas. Chapter 1. You want me to promise you what? Brandon Knight asked incredulously. That you'll do everything in your power to avoid the family curse, Jonah Belmont III said matter-of-factly. He sat beside the stone fireplace in his study at the Belmont Palace, the 100-year-old mansion his great-grandfather built. I want you to have a lifetime of happiness and love. You need to settle down, and when you do, place your boutonniere in this heirloom brass bucket. Brandon shook his head. Heat rushed through his blood. It's hard for me to even accept you as my father after all these years, he admitted to Jonah. Even before their worlds collided, Brandon was quite familiar with Mr. Belmont, the powerful tycoon and heir to the Belmont Hotel dynasty. The town was named after Jonah's great-grandfather, the first Jonah E. Belmont, a pioneer in the early days who had a hand in building the small town of Belmont. Disbelief overwhelmed Brandon's senses, and that wasn't easy to do. Brandon had seen a lot in his life. After all, he was a former detective who dug up all sorts of crazy stuff on other people. But this? He could not have seen this one coming. Yes, son, I understand. Please don't call me son. What else can I say, Brandon? I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Knowing that the doctor has given me a limited time before anything happens to me, I had you run this special project for me to find and locate any possible missing heirs. I had no idea that you would be one. I don't want or need anything from you. I know you've done well for yourself. Jonah's mouth twitched slightly into a proud smile. I see you've inherited the entrepreneurial gene. I'm very proud of all you've accomplished. Being a detective, owning a successful security systems empire, and I've heard you even have other investments in different businesses too. You're a silent partner in that new restaurant, Brenna's, right? Please don't talk about that. Brandon's tone was ice cold. His foster mother was named Brenna. When he agreed to partner with a friend to open the restaurant, he wanted to do it in her name. That's right. He grew up in foster homes. His life hadn't been all that perfect during his youth. I'm sorry. I know you were very close to your foster mother. She was your foster mother, right? Brandon didn't say anything else. His name was Brandon Jonah Knight, at least on his birth certificate. When working full-time as a detective in his agency, he'd often gone by the name Jojo, short for Jonah. But now that he was aware Jonah Belmont was his biological father, Brandon was all too happy to go back to using his given name. He wanted nothing to do with this man. Why do you despise me so much, son? Actually, you can start calling me Brandon. I don't think I'll be using Jojo in my new line of work, and especially knowing now that it's short for Jonah. Fine then, Jonah said. Look, Brandon, I'm very sorry about your mother. Sorry that you didn't find out she was pregnant after your affair with her? That's not fair, Brandon. What's not fair, sir, is that she felt she had nowhere to turn. She knew you were privileged and married. I was going through a divorce at the time. Doesn't matter. She was afraid to let you know. She didn't have anything. She left me on the doorstep of a church when I was a young kid. I'm very sorry to hear that. Jonah cast down his eyes. Jonah was all set, wasn't he? Brandon thought to himself. Sitting on a wealthy, multi-generational empire. What did he ever have to worry about in life? Brandon was shuffled from foster home to foster home until he'd been taken in by Brenna and her husband. Lovely people. Noble. Which was more than what he thought about Jonah Belmont right now. I know you don't think much of me, Brandon. I've made mistakes in my life, just like everyone else, but I'm trying to make up for them. Brandon looked out the window of the grand study with a breathtaking view of Lake Belmont. He didn't know if he was coming or going. I beg of you to give me a chance. You know I don't have much time left. I really want you to at least be happy in your life. In the past, I used to run into you at Tony Romero's barbecues, and I've never even known you to smile much. You're all serious, son." The word son coming from Jonah grated on Brandon's nerves, and he just couldn't help himself. He knew the old man was trying to be nice, but all he could think about was his dead mother and him being left on the doorstep of a church as a child. Good God, anything could have happened to him. Still, he was alive and well. He had that at least to be grateful for. But when he thought of how much his biological mother suffered alone as a single parent with no prospects, and his biological father, one of the richest and most powerful in the country, who even had the town named after his family, it all left a bitter taste in his mouth. "I do smile," Brandon answered in his defense. But so what if he was all serious all the time and didn't speak much socially to people? Was that a crime? His life was complicated. He was a detective, doing some espionage on the side that was too dangerous. He couldn't date the way he wanted. He tried that once, but his ex, Olga, had betrayed him and sold him out to the enemy. A spy herself, he should have known better. Never trust a woman, ever again. Sex was one thing, but relationships he didn't do. He helped other people solve puzzles in their lives, yet his own life was a great puzzle, complex with missing parts. Sometimes none of the pieces of life fit together, like the situation he currently found himself in. His life was dangerous. He'd made some crazy enemies during his tenure as a former spy, a detective digging up unsavory truths on some shady characters, to his now flourishing business making controversial tracking devices and other gadgets. Brandon knew he could never get close to a woman again, even if he wanted to. But it pained him in a way he could not describe. As much as he lived for the challenge of the work he did, he knew it was a heavy price to pay. No woman could possibly understand the dangerous work he often undertook. "Yes, I'm sure you do smile, Brandon, but that's not the point. I want to at least make things right for you and your brothers." "How do you propose to do that, sir?" "Well, you already know this brass bucket is blessed, and it's no joke. Dane, your brother, already placed his boutonniere inside, and I want you and your other brothers to do the same. When my great-grandfather did it, he'd not only amassed a fortune in life, but in blessings, with a long and happy marriage to the love of his life. My father did the same and received the same results. Of course, my life turned out differently, because I refused to follow what I thought was some superstitious ritual, but I feel it in my bones now. If I had done this, I believe life would have turned out differently. Not having 4 unhappy marriages and kids out of wedlock, some I didn't even know about. I really don't believe in superstition, sir. You should know that by now." "I know you probably don't, Brandon. And please, no need to keep calling me sir. I am your father, you know, even if you don't want to accept it. Anyway," he continued, "it is my bucket list challenge to you. Please do this for me. Do this for yourself, Brandon. I challenge you to reach out to find the love of your life and get married or settle down at least. Do it before I go. You only live once, Brandon. Life is here one day, gone tomorrow, but love is forever." Brandon didn't know how to respond. His heart turned over in his chest. Didn't Jonah know that true love didn't happen to everyone? Or did the old man have a point? "Brandon," Jonah said, leaning forward, his eyes pleading. "Just promise me one thing." "What is it?" "That you will at least open your heart and your mind. I realize love is not something you can make happen, but just don't be so quick to dismiss what could be happiness. Don't judge any woman you meet by what's happened to you in the past. People are different, you know that." "I am aware." "I know I have no right to ask you for anything at all, but this means a lot to me. I want to right any wrong I might have done and make sure that my boys will be okay. Will you promise? You know a promise is a comfort to... A fool, I know. Jonah finished Brandon's sentence. I didn't mean it that way, sir. I know, Brandon. Still, I can admit where I've gone wrong. I'm the biggest fool when it comes to mistakes I've made. I wish I could have done some things differently. Don't be like me, son. At 75, you don't want to look back with regrets. That's the worst thing a person can do. Live, love, and laugh while you can. Life is a one-time deal. You don't know if you'll come this way again. So please, promise me. Promise yourself. I never like to make promises, Brandon said in his deep voice. He sighed heavily. But... Just then, a knock could be heard on the door to the study. It was Jonah's sister, Maya. She was a lovely woman with silver hair and chubby cheeks. Sorry to interrupt you two. It's okay, Maya. What is it? Jonah queried. Faith Johnson will be here soon. Do you want me to go ahead and show her the items you want cleaned out? No. Not cleaned out, Maya. Jonah clarified hastily. Please don't get rid of all my things. I just want her to organize them for me. Maya frowned, placing her hands on her hips. Very well, Jonah. But you do realize we have a lot of clutter down there in the basement. You've collected billions of treasures from around the world all your life. It's going to take a lot of work to sort through. I still say we just clean them out and give whatever is still good to charity. Remember, Jonah, you can't take it with you. Yes, but I don't think so, Maya. And please show her into the study when she arrives. I've changed my mind. I will speak to her myself. What? Maya said innocently. You don't trust your dear sister? No, he said, pouring on the charm. Maya grinned and rolled her eyes. I'll show Miss Johnson in when she arrives. Hopefully she won't see that mountain of clutter and decide to run the other way. Chapter 2. Faith Johnson glanced at her itinerary for the day as she sat in the cab on her way to the Belmont Palace. Her heart pounded hard in her chest. Her palms were moist with nervous sweat, thinking about her upcoming assignment. I can do this. I'm good at what I do, she coached herself. Monday, 12 p.m. New client number 1, Jonah Belmont III. Help organize spare room. Projected to be 4-week project. 4 p.m. New client number 2, Johnson Ellimore. Organize doll collection. Projected to be 3-week project. 7 p.m. Visit Nana at Hillcrest Nursing Home. Make sure she's okay. Pay for her extra services for the month. Give landlord $850 overdue rent check from last month. 8 p.m. until closing. Moonlit Cafe and Restaurant. Cover Sandy's shift. Faith drew a deep breath. Talk about a busy day. She wondered if she'd packed her schedule too tightly. Not that she had much choice, since both clients could only see her on Monday this week. Her rent was due at the end of the month, and she was still new to this entrepreneurial gig. She needed these clients badly. The work was a blessing, especially having the honor of working with the affluent Belmont family. Besides, when she thought about her mountain of debt, she knew she had no choice in the matter. So what if she was juggling a part-time job as a waitress and running her own business on the side? Lord only knew a girl had to do what a girl had to do. Thanks to her ex, Faith was in knee-deep. She had mostly his debt to cover now. He'd never paid her back what he borrowed off her line of credit. How could she have been so foolish to trust him? Now, wasn't it ironic? She was a professional organizer with a gift for organizing other people's stuff, yet her own love life was a complete and utter mess. Shift your focus to positive things, girl. You can do it. True, she had a lot to be thankful for, despite all the crazy stuff going on in her life. Her home-based business she operated out of her tiny bachelorette apartment was really beginning to take off now that she'd started up her own business on the side. Faith's Clutter Control. She finally took her cousin Jada's advice to set up her website and start putting her skills to work. She was always the neat freak in the family, the obsessive cleaner, and she never ran out of ways to organize items in her own closet. Ever since she'd moved back to Belmont, things had started out rough, but they were beginning to smooth out. Faith read about the wealthy community of Belmont being a lucrative place for entrepreneurs to set up shop. "It's your stop, the Belmont Palace. How did you get so lucky to be going there?" the cabbie joked jovially. "I'm working there for a little while," she added, not wanting to get too much into her affairs. She tried to pay the fare, but the driver wouldn't accept it. "These people are good folks. Anyone who's in the Belmont Circle is a friend of mine. It's on me." "Are you sure?" "Sure, I'm sure. These people have done a lot of great things for me and for my business. They do plenty for a lot of people around here. Enjoy this opportunity." Faith smiled. She could not believe how warm and friendly everyone in the community was, especially when dealing with the Belmonts. The town was named after their ancestors, of course. Their great-great-grandfather was a pioneer back in the day when it was a small waterfront community, and he had a major hand in contributing to the economic development of the township. Faith exited the cab, and her jaw dropped. The place was huge. It looked way bigger than on the internet. She was beyond thrilled to have landed this client. Can you imagine what it would do for her business if she could list the Belmonts as among her clientele? Her college professor had recommended her, which she was eternally grateful. Of course, she took the professional organizer certificate course at the local college to gain her certification. A good move on her part. She read that Jonah Belmont was making some drastic changes in his home, and he had to reorganize some personal documents, a mountain of old papers. Then she read that Johnson Ellimore, her next client after this one, needed a professional organizer to sort through some old documents in the basement and organize a doll collection. Both would take 2 hours to do her assessment and initiate a plan of action for their projects. Then she could come back on a few occasions to get the jobs completed. "I can do this. Easy peasy." When she reached the top of the stone steps leading to the elegant grand entry double doors, Faith drew in another deep breath, just as she remembered from yoga. Breathe in, 2, 3. Breathe out, 2, 3. Relax. It was hard to relax when she was surrounded by all this elitism and luxury. Her eyes caught the intricate details of the opulent mahogany wood doors before using the gold-plated door knocker. The door opened. "Good morning." An older gentleman in a butler uniform greeted her. "Good morning. I'm Faith Johnson from Faith's Clutter Control," she said, sliding out her business card from her purse and handing it to him. "I have an appointment." "Yes, we've been expecting you, Miss Johnson," the man said in a thick British accent. "Please come in." He opened the door wider for her. Faith's eyes widened at the enormous marble foyer. Very nice, she thought to herself, feeling even more intimidated. From what she saw of the spectacular place with the winding staircase that seemed to go on forever, and the crystal chandelier dangling from the vaulted ceiling, the place didn't look like it needed a professional organizer. But then she remembered that Mr. Belmont requested her services for one of the rooms in the basement. "Mr. Belmont will see you in the study," the butler told her, as he directed her down a corridor towards another set of double doors. Faith's heart thumped madly in her chest. Why was she so nervous? He was a client, that's all. Only her biggest and first real client. Not counting her friends and family, who begged Faith to rearrange and organize their clutter to maximize the space in their homes. giving her the opportunity to try her business skills and garner some experience under her belt. This was, however, much different. It wasn't just any home. It was the Belmonts' home. Or more like the Belmonts' palace. She'd read about the Belmont family, but never had a chance to meet any of the members in person. She only knew Jonah Belmont, the family patriarch, was very old now and had tons of older kids, no grandkids that she'd read about. Faith walked into the study and saw him sitting on a chair by the fireplace. He looked good for his age. He had silvery, slicked-back hair and high cheekbones on tanned skin, but it was the man standing nearest to him in a dark suit who caused her jaw to drop. Mr. Belmont, Ms. Johnson is here to see you from